The process that we follow is essentially we have, at this point, we have like 20 to 40,000 exports on Reonomy that we take. Okay, and we'll take the beginning of the month, we'll export every single lead list that we want to pull for this month. Everyone's got like the hottest buyers. So like if we know like, hey, we have a buyer who's specifically looking for X metro, X type of unit number, unit count, tax bracket, location, we'll pull a list for that specific buyer. We like to prospect for someone, right? We don't want to just dial to dial. So we found that most success in just dialing specifically for X buyer. So each one of our agents has a specific buyer or 2 or 3 that they're prospecting for. We pull 1 or 2 lists for them. They prospect that list, so on and so forth. The process here is that we do export. Now, again, even if there's 15 numbers on a Reonomy number, we prospect all of them. All those numbers we'll add up and we'll put it into Reonomy. We'll import that into our dialer. We use Mojo. And same thing, doesn't matter what dialer you use. But we'll call all of them. And now we count that towards dials, but we don't count that, or calls, right? But we don't count that towards, conversations. The conversations, you're only, one of those numbers is only going to get the person, right? You maybe 2. You have an office line and a house, right? Or a house and a mobile, right? So the calls, I always tell people, is like, people get too caught up in how many calls they make. I don't give a shit how many calls you make. You can make 60 calls a day, but if they're all sphere of influence, you'll have 40 conversations and have a very good career, right? So the calls is an irrelevant number. What I more so track when you're cold calling is I care about how many leads are you generating, how many conversations with the specific owner are you having. Those are more tangible data points where we can go off of, because some days you're going to call 400 numbers to get 20 contacts and some you're going to call 60. You sort of over time will get a rough average of what that number is. And more often than not, our agents on average are making between 6,000 and 12,000 calls a month on average right now, which basically puts you at, call it 20 working days a month, somewhere between 300 and 600 dials a day. That's just a rough average for what we're seeing on an agent count basis. So
that leads me to another question. How do I get to that many dials if I only get 1,000 exports?
We pay an excessive amount extra to get more exports. Reonomy actually allows you to max out at 5,000 per account. You pay whatever your base amount is that you got, which again with a discount is $320, plus an extra $100 per month extra for additional exports. Right, for per 1,000. Sorry, it's an extra $100 per 1,000. So if you want 4,000, which is an extra 4,000 exports, it's $400 extra a month. Now, yeah. So we have several maxed out accounts, and that being said, that allows us to then kind of rip through all those numbers. Now we've been doing this for years, which is how we have a backlog of hundreds of thousands of numbers in multiple different metros and statewide in New Jersey and so on and so forth. But then sometimes we'll even use batch leads or a software called IDI to skip trace those numbers. Now again, you end up paying an extra 15 cents or $1 per lead depending on what you're looking for contact wise if you skip trace numbers that don't exist, right? Like sometimes Reonomy has some addresses where they don't have a phone number. You can look them up through different skip tracing softwares. But the long story short is that we'll export, call it your 1,000. And keep in mind that even with 1,000 numbers, which by the way, through me, they should be giving you 2,000 exports for your first month. They should give you 2,000 exports. Okay. And then it goes to 1,000, everything else. You'll take your call at 1,000, 1,000 exports. And with that 1,000 exports, let's just say that roughly 30% of those are correct numbers, right? I mean, you're not always going to sadly, that's just what it is, right? So 30% of them are correct numbers, which means 300 numbers are accurate, or 300 contact, phone numbers there are accurate to the owner. The first time you run through 1,000 numbers, you're not going to speak to 300 people. You're just not going to do that, right? You're probably going to maybe speak to 50, and even 50 is not bad. And then what'll happen is that what we try to do is that we clean our lists as we prospect through it. So you'll call it once, remove the 50 correct numbers that you spoke to and put it into your database. And then you're going to take let's just say you had 100 conversations total for 1,000, 10% contact ratio. You remove 50 that were bad numbers. Now you're down, right? Now you're down to 950, and then you remove another 50 of correct numbers. So now you're down to a 900 person list of people you've never spoken to. Now you can call that list the same, tomorrow. You can call another 900 people tomorrow. Let's just say now you spoke to 50 total people on the 900. 25 wrong numbers, 25 correct numbers. You're just cleaning the list as you dial it down. You can continue to dial it over and over again. That, at least for foundational processes, that's the upfront piece. And then I would, in the dashboard, I, give you areas to track numbers. Obviously you've trained hundreds of agents like myself. You can track your own data. I know you've probably done that 100 times. I'll even give you, so this Wednesday, I have not shared this with anybody. So you're going to be the first person to see this.
Well, I will tell you this. I'm going to use everything that you do because it seems to be drastically different than what we do on the residential side. So, and like I always tell all the people that I train, don't change my shit. It's going to work a lot better, right? So I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to do like, okay, this is your thing. I'm going to put it in your thing. Like that's how I do.
Well, look, I'm going to give you this doc, which I just created. I just custom built this myself. I'm a spreadsheet nerd.
Ari,
Yeah, so I'll share my screen while we do this together. I'm gonna go through this. This is the business workshop session that we're gonna go through this Wednesday. So, anyways, you see this here real quick. You'll basically import all your data on a regular basis on the second page here: commissions, calls, conversations, new leads, lead lists. I mean, this is how I have it broken down for every agent. But on this page here, as an example, right? So, if you want to just break down sort of my estimates of what you should be doing on a regular basis, you can plug in whatever your numbers are, right? Like you're at 80/20 with EXP. Your average deal size in your area is probably maybe what, $1 to $2 million, $1.5 million.
Yeah, something like that.
Let's just say you can double end most of your deals, say 5 points. What's your monthly personal bills?
Like actual living expenses. I mean, geez, like $12,000.
All right, great. We'll do 12 grand. And let's just say you want to make how much next year, like cash in the bank after taxes?
An extra 250 would be a pretty successful start, I think.
No, it's great. Yeah, I'm with you. So let's just say 250. So you need to make 738 grand next year before taxes. This is your total GCI. This will take into consideration everything else. So this is basically saying that you need to close on 15 transactions next year for roughly 15 million in production, 5% average commission per deal, roughly 12,000 calls a month. Again, like this is just all estimates, and then once you track it, you'll start plugging it all in, and then you can change the conversion numbers. Okay, so I just have it at 10% for conversations, 10% for leads, 10% for true offers, and executed every 10. So this will give you an idea of what you need to be breaking down here. And obviously, this will be kind of impossible, but you get my point. But the point I'm going to break here is about the LOIs is the next thing I want to track. So anyways, I'm going to have everyone kind of plug in their numbers on Wednesday. I'll go more into it, but I wanted to make sure you had a copy of it. Let's dive into LOIs because I know that's a very heated question I get literally almost every day. I want you to think about it like this. I run my company like an investment shop. We are looking to acquire properties. That is our that is our forte. We run it like an investment shop, a wholesale shop. Like we are looking to acquire assets. We're looking to flip properties. That is our bread and butter. Now, I want to understand something. We don't list anything. Nothing I do, we're not calling up a seller to try to list a property for sale unless it is literally the only viable option to possibly get this property sold. Which even then, I'll give to my agents. Take the listing. I don't care, right? Like I don't want to be bogged down. The only thing it's good for is buyer leads, essentially, right? That's all in my eyes. A horribly priced listing is good for, because if it's appropriately priced, in my eyes, I don't see the point of listing it for sale. Because like the way I want you to think about it is like if you had a residential list, like in residential, it's get the listing. Like that is the process. That is the game of residential business. In commercial, that is not the game. That is not how this game works. It's been taught that way for a long time, but that's not how the game essentially works. The vast majority of real estate deals are done off market, right? They're never seen. The best deals in the marketplace are not ever listed for sale. Because why on planet Earth would you list a property for sale when you have 40 buyers right here that would buy this property, right? You just never would. You'd represent both sides and call it a day. Same thing as if you were a principal, you would never just list the property for sale unless it's like you're trying to ask for some crazy, ridiculous top dollar and you're working with like the top 2% of brokers in the country for that specific asset class. Typically, because like if you think about it, what the largest companies in the world do, they just go, hey, Blackstone, I'm interested in selling my 5,000 unit portfolio. What would your best offer be? And that's it. It's not like they go, I'm going to list my $10 billion portfolio. No, they call up Blackstone, they call up, a couple of these huge organizations and they get an offer, right? That's it. What I'm saying is, my philosophy, and the reason why we drive LOIs as hard as we do, is because, look, and by the way, I've written up letters of intent of over $100 million. I cannot close on a $100 million deal. I will have to raise an excessive amount of money, okay? But the process is still the same. And the reason why it's still the same is because I still need to, I like to bring my clientele, my buyers who are very financially savvy, who know what the fuck they're doing, who I don't need to babysit. I want to bring them a deal on a silver platter and say, hey, I've already negotiated this deal for you. The seller is going to tell you, think about it. The first number a seller tells you is going to be a knee-jerk reaction, stupid fuck number. They're going to tell you some random number because they don't know who you are. They don't trust you. You're randomly cold calling them out of the blue. So when they say, hey, I want $3 million for a property that's maybe worth 2, right? Maybe. I will submit an offer at 1.5 to test the waters. Is this guy seriously stuck at 3? Or what's the situation? Because what I don't want to do is then bring this deal at 3 million to my investors at a 4 cap. They will think I'm stupid. So I'm not going to do that. So what I have found is that like I know what they're going to say to me. I've been doing this long enough where like I already know what the investors are going to think. They're going to think a 4 cap is absolutely stupid. No one's paying a 4 cap right now. Unless you somehow got Amazon to sign a 500-year, or 100-year lease, you might sell it at a 4 cap. Heck, you might get a 3, depending on the location. You're not getting a 4 cap for some random deal. You're just not getting that. But what you will get is a 7 or an 8 cap right now. Very reasonably. And obviously you'll have to know your market. Every market's different. Again, like, we have team now in multiple different states. I'm still learning different parts of different markets. If we talk about New Jersey, I could tell you a cap rate in just about any area. But if we just say a blanket statement of like an 8+ cap is probably pretty good in most larger metros. If I'm bringing an investor a 5 cap, he's going to think I'm stupid because they're going to give me the same objections, right? It's like bringing a house buyer, in a neighborhood we all know is worth, 500 grand, and you bring it to him at $1 million. Oh, I think this will be great for you. What do you think they're going to say? It's like, we already know that answer. So there's no reason in me not trying to pre-negotiate and knowing what they're going to say to me. So I try to pre-negotiate ahead of time. So that's what the LOI is for, right? Me already making massive levels of assumptions saying, hey, this property, let's say your Zaxby's as an example, it's a triple net single tenant lease, which by the way, I was just sent a portfolio of like 60 triple net deals, and there was a bunch of Zaxby's on there. So if he's interested in buying another one, I might have a perfect property or a guy for you that we could work on together. Just to give you some reference, this Zaxby's, they sell at a reasonable 6 to 7, like I'd say 5.5 to 7% cap rate, depending on location, which is typically, by the way, right now for all Fortune 500s / larger credit tenant organizations, they typically will sell between 5s and 7 caps all day long, depending on location. You might get 7.5s, or the higher the cap, you start getting way worse credit tenants, or there's a couple of the things such as low lease term. So they've not that much left on their lease term. Because think about it, if you're a triple net investor, I want the longest lease term possible. I want the largest lease bumps during my lease, and I want the highest credit tenant possible. If you go look right now for Dollar Trees, which has closed, 500 locations this year, and they're like have 2 years left on their lease, you're gonna be like, this is fucking scary. If you go to Walgreens right now and you see a Walgreens single tenant triple net, or like Rite Aids, right, who have closed almost every single one of their locations and they have 3 years left on their lease, this is also really scary right now. If you go to AutoZones, which have closed 700 locations this year, it's freaking scary, right? So you have to have these, there's the dichotomy of saying like, hey, what's a good credit tenant that's doing well, right? I want a good credit tenant that is doing well financially right now in this economy. I want a tenant that has a long-term lease above 10 years, ideally, more than 10 years. Right? The longer the better, right? 15, 20 years the better. Even if, by the way, they have options, right? Even if they have 3, like let's say it's 3 years left on their lease, but they have 5 options at 5 years. It's like, it's technically 28 years. Yep, but you don't know if they're extending, right? They might close. Yeah. They might close. So you want a long-term lease, and you want as many rent bumps as possible for the highest cap rate you can possibly buy.
Okay.
I mean, if we just talk foundationally, right? Like,
yeah, I get that. So for this one, they just signed a 10-year.
Okay.
With 1.5% bumps every year.
Not bad. Okay, great. This type of situation, you could probably, no, I want you to know, when I send out letters of intent, by no means am I expecting them to get accepted. When they get accepted, I sometimes laugh and I sometimes get scared because I'm like, I offer them too much money, right? Like, I'm like, wow, they accepted it right away. There's maybe something I don't know. But the whole purpose of the LOI is just to get a counter because I want to know what their real number is. Like, are they stuck on this ridiculous number, or are they willing to negotiate to a fair and reasonable price where we can execute? Because the biggest mistake that I see commercial real estate agents make is that they spend way too much time with sellers that are not true sellers. It's like that residential seller who wants, 800 grand, or I'm not selling whatsoever, and it's like in a 500 grand market, in that neighborhood, right? And they're like, well, I have the nicest lot, the biggest lot, the nicest house, the nicest this. And some silly agent is like, oh, I'll take your listing no matter what. I just want a listing because I have a sign on the ground. The problem is that too many commercial real estate agents do this with every single lead they get. This is why I submit letters of intent, because it's a sifter, right? I want to find who do I have the highest likelihood chance of working with or transacting with versus who is a pie in the sky, maybe 6 months or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years down the road. Because I want to take all my energy and focus it on this side of the quadrant of people who I can probably transact with versus who I can't. So the point is that most agents will just list this entire pile, right? And like, no matter what side of the coin it's on. I will never do that, right? So I just want to find the people who I can transact with, and then I want to find a way to transact with them.